Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm Yvette Jones. I'm not Scott Cowen, but it's my great pleasure to spend a little bit of time with Scott this afternoon, to have him back on campus, and to talk about his new book, Lead and Succeed, which I think is just out and probably on sale over at the tent. But we're going to assume that no one in the crowd has read the book yet, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Scott is no stranger. I don't think he really needs an introduction. I think everybody here knows that Scott was president of Tulane for nearly nearly 20 years, from 1998.
Like a long time, like 30 years.
Yeah,
or so.
well, dog years, so we always say it was forever. And he's also been the interim president at Case Western Reserve. So pleasure of having the opportunity to talk to somebody who's twice been in the presidency, but been in higher education for a long time, and business. Scott has written a number of books. One, The Inevitable City, which was about the recovery of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And the other one is my favorite title, which if you want to tell them later why you named it that, Winnebagoes on Wednesdays, which had a significant role in our athletic history at Tulane. Is a great book about the landscape of higher education and intercollegiate athletics, actually almost 10 years ago, which has dramatically changed since. So Lead and Succeed is really a great little book. I'm showing you the book because it's a quick read. It is about leadership, but more importantly, it is a story about Scott Cowen in a lot of ways. And I asked Scott why he wrote this book at this time. So I'm going to let Scott let you start by talking about that.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you all for coming today. I was hoping nobody would come, but things work out this way. But I'm delighted to be back here with all of my friends again and New Orleans. Why did I write the book? There's several reasons why I did. One is I feel very strongly that the leadership we see around the world today is not the one I remembered years ago at some times. And I fear that what's going on around the world with leadership is only going to make it worse for a lot of people. And it's not a particular country I'm looking at, it's just a question of why is this going on today when it wasn't going on a few years ago, or when I was, maybe it was beyond that. So I really worried about that, and I wanted to write about it. But the most important thing is I really wanted to think about young people. Because most of us in this room, it's in our generation that we have that has come up to where we are today right now with leadership. And what I really want to do is think about the next generation of leadership. Those students who are in college, and in college and in high school, those are the ones that I want to get to now. No disrespect to any of you, but that's the group. Because we are what we are now, and we're not likely to change all that much. But if we can get kids in schools, I mean really schools, high schools and college, maybe the next generation will be a different generation that will make the world better. And that's the main reason why I decided to take on the book itself. And the reason I also did is my last few years at Tulane University, I taught a course on leadership. And I learned a lot from that course, just doing it with my colleagues. And it was a very popular course here. And then I left and I went back to Case Western Reserve University. And they didn't have a course there. And I did a course there. I get 150 students every time I go. And I was glad to do it because I know those kids would learn something that nobody else would probably tell them while they're going through college. So that was the reason that I did it. And I hope it does have that existence for it. It doesn't mean that people who are older might not enjoy it, but it is that group that I'm looking for, because I think they need it, and they will be, hopefully, as they go forward, they'll know the things what leadership is really all about.
Great. I'm not going to read from the book, but I do want to make note. There's something very distinctive about this book. At the end of every chapter, Scott gives a homework assignment. So the reader must give a point of reflection, take note from the lesson in that chapter, and write notes, sort of a little documentary of what you took away from it. And in ever Scott Cowen fashion, there's also an action section in the back. So, for example, I think one of the actions was, is there one thing you've really wanted to do that you've been afraid to take the initiative to do? Take an action to get it started today. So, Scott, last thing on the format of the book, what made you make this a workbook and not just, a book that we read and put on the shelf?
Well, because I wanted them to work. That was the reason.
And
I wanted
you wanted
them to read
everybody
it,
to
and I
work
didn't
all the
want them
time,
to walk
right?
off and get nothing out of it. So I think one of the things that makes it, some distinction is the fact that they have to do things. And believe it or not, the students now have already read it, and I ask them to come and talk to me about it because I want to know what they're saying. And I haven't gotten to the point yet where I'm going to grade them on it because I would never do that. But I'd like to see whether they're actually going to take this seriously.
Good.
If they take it seriously, I think they maybe have a future. If they don't, out the door. All right, that's it.
Black and white, always. So one of the things about the book that is fascinating to me is that Scott uses this book almost like an autobiography. Through the story, through the leadership sections, he does share a lot about himself. And he's not one to do that naturally. So I asked him, why did you open up in this particular book and really talk about your personal journey and use it in the context of leadership?
This is the hardest part to talk about. I had a lot of problems when I was growing up. And my parents, particularly my father, if he were alive today, or my mother, they would say, "We're shocked that anything positive happened with you." No, I'm serious. And I did have problems back then that people didn't know about. But I lived in that environment where it wasn't. And it had an impact on me for many years. And the only person in my family that believed in me was my sister. And she would say, "There's more to him than you know," to my parents. So as I grew up, I thought about all of that. And it was difficult, and I got through it. But what I didn't know was that I had dyslexia. And it was not known until I was in my 20s. And that was a big surprise to me. But in one way, it was a positive thing, because I had something I could say that caused all the things that I had. And then I began to wonder about all little kids that may have the same thing happen to them. Not that they would have dyslexia, not that they'd have that, but maybe they have other things. And reading what I went through, where nobody believed in me other than my sister, there's hope for you. So that's why I say that's the group that I really admire, not that I don't love all the others, but that generation right there. And I've had in all the classes I teach come up to me afterwards and they talk about their problems. And I tell them my story. And I say, "Listen, if I was able to get through this, you should be able to get through yours." And we would talk about it, and I still do to this particular day. It's hard to tell this to a group, especially after you say, "Now I know why he was such an idiot as president of Tulane University," but that's what it was. So that really, in a certain way for me, it's a case study. It really is a case study for young people who struggle. And people tell them, put them down, not up. And my view is what we got to do is get them up and get them to know what leadership is about and do the best they can the rest of their life, like had that opportunity.
You gotta love him. So there's a quote that Scott makes in this book, that no one is a natural-born leader. And as long as I've known Scott Cowen, I've always said he was just born to be a leader. But one of the things you find out through this book and talking to Scott about his history, there were some turning points where he might have known what leadership was, but some real turning points that really defined you as a leader. Do you want to share a couple of those
Sure.
with us today?
I think what's interesting, by the way, in high school, I was head of the school group. I was also in college, so it's not like I didn't have leadership jobs. The fact of the matter is I wasn't doing anything as a leader other than having the table, the call of it, whatever it is. And I finally came to know is it's not just having the title, you have to really do something about it. And then I was fortunate to have a number of people help me along the way. It started after I got out of the military, and by the way, the best thing that ever happened to me in my life was the military. That's where I learned about leadership. And it's hard for me to talk about this, to be honest, but it made a difference in my life. So when I got out of the military, I went to George Washington University to get my MBA degree. And I got my MBA degree, and I wanted to go into finance. And the dean comes up to me and says, "You shouldn't go to finance. It's a waste of your time." I said, "Really? I mean, won't I get a lot of money?" I mean, he said, "No, you should go on and get a PhD." I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, no, you should really ought to go do this. And he said, once again, there's something in you that the faculty thinks, and they think you should go on with it. So I went on it and did very, very well with it and got my PhD. Then went to Bucknell University. And I was there 2 years. After the second year, the dean brought me into his office. It said, "It's time for you to leave." I said, "Why?" He said, "You deserve to be at a major research university. You're wasting your time here." And then I went to Case Western Reserve University, where I spent most of my time, other than here at Tulane. So that was a surprise for me, but they took the time to talk to me about me. Why? Things that I didn't know about myself, but they thought were really helpful. And today, I try to do that with students myself, to pull them out and say, there's more to you than you believe. And so that's what happened. And then the next one that's on my list is Norman Francis. An amazing man. You all know him. Every one of you know him. He was so much to me at Tulane. I remember he came over to my office to say hello. I said to him, "Geez, I didn't realize you were so old." And he looks at me, he says, "Well, that's really nice." But I said, "Oh, God, you've been there so long," and so on. But we became great friends. And he and his wife, and my wife back then, we used to go to church together, we did things together, and so on. And when I wanted to know about the South, when I wanted to know about people of color, I always went to Norman, always did. He's amazing. I know all of you know of him and know him personally. And I just said to myself, look, I've had all of these people in my life that have helped me, that built me up, not down, but up. And so I'm a big believer, if you will, of having mentors. They're the most, best thing you can have in your life.
And this is mine right here, so I'm
Are
very
you kidding me?
fortunate.
She ran to Tulane, while I was there.
Didn't mean you weren't my mentor.
She should be making this. She did all this stuff, not me. All right, but I'll go pretend I did.
Go ahead, you
All
did
right,
it.
go ahead.
All right. But one of the great defining moments for both of us in our leadership or in our running of the university was Hurricane Katrina. And Scott does talk about being tested and how being tested in certain situations really does begin to shape you and define how you handle things. But what's interesting to me is you define the testing moment as being those days right after Katrina, when he was on campus with, I see Debbie Grant in the audience, and there are probably others who were on this campus, rode out the storm, really heroic efforts to get off of campus. But for me, it feels like the real heroics there were the days, the months, the years of rebuilding, and not just rebuilding Tulane, but rebuilding the city. When a lot of people bailed and just turned their backs. So I've asked Scott this question. There's two questions here. I mean, how did you get the focus, the energy, and the strength to really push through all that time? And then more importantly, how in the hell did you know what to do?
Well, the first thing is, I love New Orleans, and I always will. Jesus, like I haven't. Jeez.
You're
I
doing
really do.
fine, by the way. Keep going.
No, no. What you all didn't know is that I had a job to go to another university about a year before, or no, a year after, Cornell, after. And I said, there's no way I'm leaving. I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to do everything I can to rebuild the university, but the city as well. We're the largest, one of the largest, if not the largest, organization in New Orleans. There was no way anybody was going to get me out of New Orleans. The other thing, I'm a big believer of good can come out of bad. It's hard to say that, but it is. Silver linings, I call it. There's silver linings. And as we all rebuilt Tulane and the city and so on, I think there were things that improved, and I'll say public education. As many of you know, we created it happens to be the Cowen Institute now, and we took a public center that was one of the worst in the country, and now it's gone up, up, and up. And that's a silver learning. There's other silver learnings that I believe we did that many of you didn't like it. Some of you may remember I was hung in effigy at my house because they didn't like what I did. But I believe everything I did, I stick to it because I think it made for a better Tulane and a better New Orleans. And even when, you want me to talk about Case Western or no?
Sure, because some of you may not know, but Scott accepted the role of interim president at Case Western in 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
And served during COVID, another challenging time for all of
Right.
organizations.
In higher education, they called me the master of disaster. No, I'm serious. Everybody who has a
Good
problem
title.
in a school, they call me and say, will you come? We're going down, and it's the terrible place. Will you come and help us? I said, what are you talking about? You went to Tulane, you did this here, why won't you do it there? I said, I'm not smart, but I'm not including stupid. So no way I'm doing that. But seriously, that's what my reputation is tonight. He's the master of disaster. So when I went there, God knows what happens is right before the COVID, the president leaves and she goes someplace else. And now the COVID's there. So they called me and I said, would you come? I said, and I said, listen, because I had spent so many years with him, I said, yes, I'll come and I'll go there. And I worked with them for a year and a half, and then we got a president after that. But I felt once again my duty was, since I had had some experience in other things, that this was a worthy thing to do. And there's silver linings that have come out of that also. Do you know what one of them? Before the COVID, not a single faculty knew what a Zoom was. Every faculty in the world knows what a Zoom is. They don't know what to mean to go to class. So that has changed, but that is all different. That's what happened during that time. And I learned so much from Hurricane. I took that to them. And what it was virtually every other week, I would write a notice to the entire faculty and let them know how we're doing, what's working, what's not working, what we're going to do now. Why? People are scared during that time. They want to know what's happening to them. And my view is I'm going to tell them what it is. And maybe that will calm them down a little bit. And I learned that from Katrina, because that's what we did. The second thing I learned is the first thing you take care of is your faculty and your staff and the students. So we really ramped up everything we were starting to do, really, because when I looked at what we were doing, I'm saying to myself, this is not enough. We got to double and triple our work here to really make it done. And we did that. And it turned out okay for them. Now, a funny thing that happened along the way, as I said, the president left, and the chair of the board calls me. He said, we want you to be president of Case Western Reserve. I said, are you killing me? No, never going to happen. I said, I've done it once. I'm not doing it again. I won't do it. Oh, no, that's no, what, yeah. Okay, so then he calls 3 weeks later. He says, listen, let's talk a little bit more about you coming. And I said, you've told me one more time, I'm never going to talk to you, and I'm never coming here again. So my love was at Tulane in New Orleans. Not that it wasn't a Case Western, because Case Western made me a dean when I was 32 years, the youngest ever there. And they offered me the job twice there while I was at Tulane. No way I was going to take it. So.
And why did you come to Tulane, Scott?
Well, because you were there.
That's right.
I'm not that smart, but I'm not
We
that stupid.
practiced that line over and over, believe me.
But you know what? As I sit here, I could start with every single tertiary people in this room that made me, the city, and the university better. All of you. Not me, all of you.
So I'm going to switch gears on you just a little bit, because I definitely want Scott to talk about what's going on in higher ed today and how a lot of what you experienced, would apply without talking. We're not talking politics at all. But one last thing that Scott said in the book that I completely was blown away by is he talks about you have to take time as a leader for self-care and to hit pause occasionally. Now, every one of us who worked for Scott Cowen never, ever saw that, heard that. In fact, he used to tell us, don't be quitters, all the time. So, Scott, what changed? Why?
Well, I don't know. I got
Are
older.
you old?
Yeah, I got older. I forgot that I said it, so what do I know? There. But I will tell all of you, is Haida here?
Haida is here, and I should
Where's
have
Haida?
I should have said
Stand
this
up,
book
Haida.
was written by
All right,
Haida Winston.
this
There you
woman,
go.
this book would not have happened if it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Because, I had all the ideas and all the stuff and so on, but I was so busy doing other things, and she's so much smarter than I am, that she helped me put this whole thing together. So I want to make sure you all knew that. And I was blessed to have her, just as I was blessed
So
to
did
have
she make up that line?
Huh?
Did she make up that line, self-help and pause? Or that wasn't you?
I don't think that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in higher ed across, in fact, the U.S., but really in the context of today's world. You were president twice, once during a very horrific natural disaster, and the second time during a pandemic. So talk about what kind of leadership is needed in times like these when, you know, your funding's being cut, the government's after you, public scrutiny all over the place. I mean, these are not normal times, and we don't know how long that will last. So I'm interested in your thoughts about that from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, and I happen to be on the board of Case Western Reserve University also. And so I talked to the president a lot, who's terrific. He's very, very good about it. But how we go about this, what's happening to higher education is unbelievable. That's all I can say to you. And I'm not going to talk about politics. It's not. But it's going to hurt the world. It's going to hurt the United States. But what's going on. So I'm very concerned about what's happening then. And how I think it's probably going to get even worse before it gets better, if it ever gets better again. And I know these are tough signs, but I believe I can see it already, some of the things that are happening at the universities. You know, not supporting health anymore in many areas, doing many other things. And what they're going to do, I think, is reduce the quality of what we have in higher education in the United States and take it over to China or somebody else who's going to be better than us. And I don't put up with that, but that's what I worry that's going to happen. And it's happening right now. I'm not going to kid you, but once again, I'm not going to put anything on it, but that is what is happening in it. And I'm sure President Fitz understands this. We certainly know it over at Case Western Reserve University because I talk with these people every single day virtually about what we should do and how we should go about doing it. And he's terrific. So yes, I'm very concerned. In higher education, you know, we have the best system in the world. In the world, we have the best system. And then when you start taking that down, 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 somebody else is going to take it up. They're not idiots. And it's going to be China. It's going to be others.
The other big change in higher ed since Scott was president has been in intercollegiate athletics. And I think Scott's tenure at Tulane was riddled with issues around athletics. I know we both felt strongly about certain issues, and particularly when you look at today, the semi-professionalizing of, you know, intercollegiate athletics, students getting paid. I'm interested in your thoughts about where that is as a system.
Well, what the system is, you're buying students to come and do athletics at the institutions at very large amount of money, by the way. This is not simple stuff that they're getting. And I say to myself, is really this is what we should be doing here? Winnebago's on Wednesday. I don't know if any of you read my book of Winnebago's on Wednesday. And that's in that book is where I really said I felt intercollegiate athletics was getting really off the rail, especially by paying students. I just I don't believe in it. I simply don't. And you know that they're getting millions, not little, millions, more than some of us have here, just to go to college and do it. I don't buy it. I simply don't. So, but it's continued. I don't think it's going to change anymore. I mean, it will be the same as it was before. So, I've written about it in Winnebago on Wednesday. But anybody know why the total is Winnebago's on Wednesday?
The title of the book.
Anybody know that?
Some of us know it, yeah.
All right. All right, who wants to come up? Go ahead.
Show up on Wednesday, party all the way through the.
There you go.
Well, actually, we were trying to keep a football coach, who will go unnamed, who would not accept even the largest salary we could possibly offer and more because we couldn't guarantee Winnebago's on Wednesday at Tulane University.
When he came into my office, and I said, "Why are you leaving?" He said, "There's no money, more money. I want to go, and I want to be there on Thursday, Wednesday." I said, "You're leaving the university because you want to go over there? What kind of university will allow you to come over there?" They did.
He said they have
was
Winnebagos on
Winnebagos
Wednesday
on
and
Wednesday.
one stoplight between my house and the stadium.
That's why he left. So if you ever wondered why he left,
make that
that's
up.
why he left.
Right.
You know?
Scott, we have a little bit of time left, and what I, just wonder if I'd asked you this question before, and I thought it'd be interesting if you share it. So much of your book is about leadership leading to good, and we all think of leadership in a positive way, but I asked Scott, can leadership also be evil? Can it be bad? And I'm interested in your thoughts about that. And don't mention any names.
I'm not mentioning any, but the answer is absolutely yes. Narcissistic people, trouble. People who think they're the smartest in the room, trouble. And I can go on and on with it, but any people that have those attributes, I don't want them anywhere near me. Because that's the problem you have. You think you're the silver. The one attribute that I have is I tell everybody, she knows this, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And you know why? I don't mind it. Because I then can talk to other people to help me go through and just not think, do something else, because I'm the smartest person in the room. I have a little problem with that right now over in, I won't go into a lot of details, over at, in Chicago, pardon me?
In Cleveland?
Yeah, in Cleveland. So I am chairman of a very large private company. And I hired a new CEO. He's terrific. But unfortunately, he also thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. So one day, I went to him and I said, listen, you're terrific. You're not the smartest guy in the guy. And don't ask like that. Well, I won't use the word that I used. But I'd say, don't do it. Do your work, but don't go around saying, oh, no, I'm the guy, this is it, you don't know what you're doing, you know what you're doing. That's not going to work, anything. So, I worry. And what I really look for is people who have resilience. If you're going to be a leader, everybody in here, I know so many of you in this room, and sometime in your life, things didn't work. And the question is, what's the resilience? Do you just quit and go up, or you just go on and make it better and just say you're going to? So this notion of resilience, I think, is very, very important. And, I always think about, when people ask me about it, there's 3 or 4 things, or I should say more than that. First of all, and I do this now myself, to be very honest with you, I continue to talk about to myself my strengths and my weaknesses. Because there comes a time, and I've said this to my wife, Leslie, I'm not as good as I used to be. Simply not. So there comes a time where you say, that's it. You move on. So this notion of being honest about your strengths and your weaknesses. Cultivate a growth mindset. That's a good one, because that is that if you can do that, keep learning. Regardless how old you are, and so on, just keep learning. And if you do that, you'll continue, you'll have resilience. Next one is having supportive relationships. All of our, as I say here, I look here and I look at all the people who are so helpful. Also take care of self-care. Because there comes a time to all of us, as it is for me. And be the best person you can be. So I believe in that. I've been thinking a lot about that at my sign, because there's time to say goodbye. And it's best for the person, and it's best for the organization. So that's that one.
Well, I was going to ask you for some words of wisdom, but those are terrific.
Yeah, getting older is not easy.
Nope.
It's better than not being easy, but
The alternative is not good.
The alternative is not good.
Right, exactly.
And but it comes at a time where you just say to yourself, you know what, it's time to do something else. So, I've said to my wife, in the end of this year, I'm getting out of everything. And I'm going to take the last few years I may have and enjoy life. And I suggest that to all of you if you're in the same position, because you don't know how many more years you have. I happen to be 78 years now. Actually, though, still in good shape. But otherwise, that's been important to me.
Well, Scott, let me say, you had an impact on this institution, on the people in this room, and I'm sure that if you were sitting on a stage at Case Western in Cleveland, it would be exactly the same. I know that you keep saying you're going to slow down and start doing things, and I don't believe it. So, let's just see how that goes.
That's what my wife says. She said the bullshit.
That's right. Let's just see how that goes. And, by the way, Leslie is not going to accept a memo every morning of all the things that need to get done. So I would suggest you not do that.
There's one more thing, though, that I also want to talk about just for a minute, is because I talked about resilience. The second thing I look in a leader is emotional intelligence. How many people out here know what emotional intelligence is? Okay. For those of you who don't, I'll tell you exactly what it is. There's empathy, effective communication, social skills, self-awareness, self-regulation. These are the things. If you don't have emotional intelligence, the person doesn't, don't stay 1 second with them. Not 1 second. And I've always thought about this all the time to say, do I believe in this? And the thing is through my year, I now believe of this very, very strongly, very strongly.
So my last question, and I want to give everybody a chance after we finish to talk to you if they want, but what are you most proud of in your professional life?
Besides my children and my wives.
Yeah, and that's your personal, so professional. What do you want us to put on the epitaph, on your tombstone?
Well, there's two things.
Okay.
The thing I'm most proud of is being here when the hurricane was here. That's why when that school's, I told you I had another school who invited me, I said, there's no way I'm ever leaving, because there was no way I was going to do that. So I don't know. What's the other part?
No, that was it. That was
That's
good
it.
enough. I'm leaving it there.
No, you know why? I was here at a time where I could make a difference. Didn't really make a difference.
Yep. I would say, let me just say, come on.
She's still doing what she did before.
I've enjoyed this immensely, being able to tell them what to do. So what did you say? It's been fun. These are your parting words.
I want to thank all of you.
Yeah, here you go.
I want to thank all of you for being here today. I was hoping nobody would come, but, can I have not everything?
Then we'd have to.
But, as I look around the room, I must know at least, 3/4 of the people I know well here, and how you supported me, the university, rebuilding. That's the group. When I was in the military, I wanted to be with the best. If I'm going to have this, I want to be the best. You're the best. You did have silver linings. You made things better. Nobody would have wanted
this thing to happen to us, but there were silver linings. I think the university is better than it would have been if it hadn't happened. I don't think the city would have. It's a shame to say, because I'm saying I'm not sure what I would have done more, or what we would have done here. But we did it together. It wasn't me, it wasn't you, well, it was her. But, I was sleeping most of the time. But I look around the room and I see all of you, and you made this work here. You got to be proud of yourself. Really. And what I'm going to do is, Leslie and I have said we're going to come to New Orleans at least twice a year because, to come with our friends and do whatever we want to do here, because I love the place, and she does too, because you may know she was here and took courses here for the last couple of years when I was still here. And she loves it as well. So she said, why don't we just come 2 or 3 times a year? And I said, I am. And you know what? I like the food, even though I ate something yesterday, and I've been sick since then. But I won't mention where it was.
You did a great job being sick.
But what I like is, I like all of you. More than that, I love it.
And
Thank
Scott,
you
we
for
love
being
you.
with us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I survived.
Thank you all for being
Yeah.
here. Really appreciate it. And thank you for letting Scott and me have this little moment together.